That's for
So
sure.
I believe Kevin is going to join us as well. And as we're waiting for Kevin to join, I think we should probably just set the scene as to what we're going to discuss here. I did a couple of slides, which will surprise you because you didn't know they were coming. So we're going to be talking about which tool to use when and considering Teams, Viva, and Loop. And you've been doing a lot of work with Loop, haven't you?
Yeah, tons. Yeah, behind the vision all the way and watching it from the ground up. It's really good.
You're the Loop master.
Yeah. I've got dizzy as I've gone around it. Yep.
Yep, round and round. So I guess really one of the first things we need to do is define those three products and why we've picked those three, why they kind of overlap in some ways, or people may be confused as to how they overlap. So I've picked out the three sort of buzzwords, the taglines that Microsoft use for describing these products. So Teams being the hub for teamwork, and Viva, our employee experience platform, and Loop, the flexible collaboration canvas.
Yeah, that's a good description.
Yeah. Do you think that really that describes all three?
I know that each has a lot of depth to it, but I can see where thinking about and discussing how each of those work, there appears to be overlaps, and it's good to be able to think about strengths and weaknesses. Not so much which tool when, but the more that I think about some of these tools, the more that there is a loop within a loop, if I can use that analogy. I'll get into it later on.
Kevin looks bemused as to which stream he's in. He's probably got sound from one and not the other.
Maybe.
Here we go. It does help if I don't mute a tab. Sorry, Sam.
Exactly. So, Kevin, we were just describing the differences, and Darrell was saying that there is overlap and it's kind of a loop within a loop. So I'll let you finish that thought, Darrell.
Yeah. The way I've been thinking about Teams for some time is yes, it does bring together the places that we work, the conversations we have. It channels them, so it's a familiar construct. We've seen it in other products. Viva as an employee experience, like when we see those diagrams and we see product, or service, but underpinning that security, underpinning that cloud-based infrastructure, that sort of horizontal line that underpins everything. So that's some of the things that we see here that Viva underpins as an employee experience and ties a lot of these things together. But then if you tilt it on its side, all of a sudden Teams becomes an underpinning thing because it's where our conversations are in our files. And where I think the Loop overlap goes, and I will try to not get on spiels and keep my responses to a minute or less, is that it's fulfilling this vision that or this hope that people had with the Microsoft 365 products, that it shouldn't, or we wouldn't, how do I put it, try not to matter where and what tool we're using, but that we collaborate where we are and that it's available wherever we are. And that's kind of where Loop started, with this disconnected vision of components and a feature without a product. It felt like components and collaborative spaces that you could attach to your conversations and stuff like that. But now the Loop app actually closes the loop on Loop, and it's like, here's the places where we could work from wherever we are and attach those collaborative spaces, low friction spaces to do that. Now we've got a place to put them. Does that make sense?
It does. In fact, I've got an image that I've been using coming up here that basically agrees with you, that I think Loop is kind of that missing piece of Microsoft 365. and really gives us the ability to deliver on the promise of that interconnected working relationship between all of these different tools. Yeah.
In some ways, when you first look at it, it feels a little underwhelming. It certainly did when we saw the fluid demo page, and it looks like a web page, which is a bit like a notebook, and I can co-author in Notepad now for Windows. That's what it felt like. And then you throw this / in, and what's these things? And that / list continued to grow. But the deceptively simple appearance of it is actually intentional. It's not about introducing heaps of choice and toolbars and all sorts of everything, right? It is, let's get started quickly from where we are, get that idea out there. Eventually we're going to use fuller, richer tools that we can publish these things and do other stuff, but this is about simplifying collaboration right where we are right now.
And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's right where we are, having that same content everywhere. And I kind of feel that the Loop app, especially to me, is much like Delve. It's kind of sharing the power of what's behind all of this. Not the Loop app in itself, I think it's nice, but I think it's that ongoing vision of where it will go. In the same way Graph was what was powering the Delve app, and that really was the kind of starter for it. That's where I see with Loop, especially with the Loop components, it will be the natural way that we share things. It's that componentized creation of content that can be used in lots of different places that people can collaborate on, exactly as you said there, where they are, and bringing that to people. It's that connecting people together on those different things. I was particularly excited about the way you could bring your tasks now into Loop. Sorry, actually, I'm going to rephrase that because I got this slightly wrong. You can use tasks within Loop and use them into To-Do. You can't currently bring your existing tasks into Loop, which I was a little disappointed about. But I think it's then that's how you connect these things together very nicely.
Yeah.
I think this is where we'll see that growth. It's going to be that ongoing change to this. It's not going to be that one-off. It's going to build and build and build as well.
Yeah, if you're on that line of thinking where the things that we want and that we hope for it to be today, of course, we have high expectations. We want it to do all sorts of things. But that's because we know the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. We can see the possibilities. And the good news is those possibilities are very possible because it is a full suite of tools. So expect to see Loop in other places that we work, and vice versa, if I can put it that way. See those other places inside Loop.
Yeah. I was going to say, I mean, we're talking about Loop here, but this conference that we're running is about Viva. So it begs the question, why is Loop important for people who are focused on an employee experience platform? Do either of you have a view on that?
Yeah, I can start
Obviously.
quickly. Yeah.
You, Darrell.
Yeah, well, just like one thing, and it kind of came up in a few talks on insights, well-being. We can't always work at the same time as our team members. We know that. We've got various different tools to do that, and that's partly the challenge. We've got all these different places to check and to find stuff and to go down 3 or 4 levels deep into folders and understand how this team works and that team organizes their stuff. Loop I see as a way of helping improve well-being by simplifying and bringing things together and working asynchronously in our own time.
And I think for me there's part of that what I was just talking about in the last one, connecting people together and connecting people to what they need where they need it, which is kind of a different way of saying what Darrell was saying there. But I think it's also I take that what you were talking there about asynchronous work. We're a global 24-hour conference here, trying to get those things back and forth between us, organizing that. we can't always have meetings. Please don't let us always have meetings. The more we can make use of putting that knowledge into places where people can see it and pulling that information out. To me, this is where the Viva element comes into it. Not specifically with Loop, but generally trying to summarize that content to make it relevant to you. I was just talking in the connections room before this around how we can personalize that element. So bringing that stuff that's relevant to you where you need it. That to me is the Viva connection. I talk when I talk about what is Viva, my closing remarks are always Viva makes it easy to do the right thing. So it's about putting that knowledge, sharing that in a secure way where you need to, which again you can do with Loop, you can do with Teams and other elements, but then having it as open as possible to everyone that needs to access it. So you're not having to wait for people to wake up. That knowledge is captured there. And I think the more we can have that employee experience of, I know where to go to get the things I need to get, Viva kind of pulls together all these services like Loop, like things going to Teams. Even, we haven't even mentioned Outlook on them. Just looking at your picture and going, yeah, it's not on there. I know it's part of Microsoft 365, but email is still relevant to so many people. So it's about getting that information. And again, that's where Loop comes in nicely. You can have those Loop components in email. They can all share through. So it's getting that employee experience. It's a really cheesy phrase and gets overused, but it's the empowerment, empowering people to be able to get what they need to get done, not just doing paperwork for it. And I think that's where Viva sitting together all these services works well for it.
Yeah, and I think we forget really when we talk about all of the Viva tools that, that empowerment pillar currently only has Viva Sales in it, but actually Microsoft 365, Teams, that wider productivity tool set, they all fit into the empowerment of the employees to actually do their job, don't they?
Yeah, for me, Topics is one of the most empowering ones. I joined Avanar back in January, and you join a large organization, knowing who does what, knowing what things are available, what things the offerings we have and things. In the first 3 days, every time I ask someone, with big thanks to Zoe Wilson, who hopefully is listening at some point today, they'd say, go and look at the topics page, just go and search for it. And you're kind of like, oh, how do I find this out? Oh, if I search for it, there it is. It's got those curated knowledge of who to go and speak to. It's got the key articles and things on there and generally kept up to date, or it was very easy for me to kind of nag a couple of people because I could see who the experts were. And it was genuinely helpful in kind of going, okay, I get a bit of this now. And searching for, those TLAs in organizations, those 3-letter acronyms, trying to work out everyone keeps talking about. Almost, I can't think of any that I couldn't find by doing a search for it, and a topics page came up and it had an explanation and often a link to what that tool was or what it was about. It's like, oh, okay, I can get on. I'm not being blocked. And especially being remote, you can't turn around and tap people on the shoulder. I had that ability to do things asynchronously, and then I couldn't then. At the time it was OneNote. Now I've got Loop, which is fantastic. I can make a note of things. So when I had my meeting with the career advisor, I had 3 or 4 things, not like 200 things that I had to be nagging them left, right, and center. I could get on with being as productive as quickly as possible, and that to me is the empowerment for it.
Yeah, I hear then where topics is successful is where you're developing, if not you already have, a culture of curation. Curators, people who are collecting things, and they do take a moment to enrich that knowledge on that page or that topic. And that's so important. Like AI will do a little bit to get you off to a start, and it'll find a few things and search and make some suggestions, but topics does rely on a human at this point to, I don't know what Copilot's going to do with topics, who knows? But it's like it still has an element of we are all caring for one another or thinking of the next person when we're taking that moment to bring that knowledge into one place. And I think that's a similarity with Loop. That's where when Loop is successful, it is when you've got that same kind of attitude. You're bringing things onto the same page. you're making it easier for people to find related to that task, that project, that thing.
So what do you see happening next? I mean, we've got Copilot, we've got AI, we've got Viva, we've got Loop. Any thoughts on how the future might change with these products, with the integration?
It'll be all
Do
the
you
stuff
think
we've been
integration
waffling
is
about
next?
will come into reality. So
You think people will start using these products a lot more, Kevin? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I think they will become natural. I mean, I slightly don't like the fact we're talking about all these different services, that we're having to talk about Copilot, that we're having to talk about Loop and talk about systems. We shouldn't need to. It should just fit in there in the natural flow. And that, I think, is what will happen. Yeah, I'm going to go straight in with it. Microsoft needs to market things, so they're going to push names. They're going to get people excited about products in there. That is the natural thing. And speaking with clients, you don't go and talk to them about how are we going to collaborate better. You should, but that often doesn't resonate. Whereas if they've heard things, especially Copilot, the conversation about that is so big at the moment, so interested that it's got that attention. You just need to say that word, and then you need to have the justification and why it's important from there. What I think the future will be is that will just be there. It will be the natural thing that sits alongside there. Loop will be the natural place that people go. In fact, and I don't want to upset Darrell on this one, I hope the phrase loop disappears, because I think it will be, originally it was the Fabric framework powering a lot of experiences. And I think eventually that will become the way it is. It won't be, it will just be the way things happen in all these different services. So where I think it goes is it just becomes natural for people. You have a chat window that you can ask, and that's where you have your Copilot and talk around in there. You can get it to summarize, you can get it to do the things you want to do to be more productive, and you don't think about it.
I think you're onto something. Like at the moment, it is even as granular as Copilot 4 enter product name here. Like, so out in the zeitgeist, it's Copilot this, Copilot that. But when you come down to it, it is Copilot for PowerPoint, Copilot for a Viva product, Copilot for that. So even now, that product is appearing to be segmented. But my hope is that if it's going to become the next, if we draw a parallel this way, if Loop was the place to start collaborating where you are, spin up a little collaborative space called a component and just get started, then Copilot surely is wherever we are, we should be able to command or ask it to do whatever we need to, and it will create the slides, or it will summarize the thing, or whatever. And perhaps, for some, and depends on how the product goes, that could be the starting point for a lot of things. Hey, Copilot, call Sara and Kevin for me, write the agenda, send that out, and start up a collaborative space for me, whatever it's called in the future. And yeah. Copilot will know, and maybe it'll make some suggestions based on our previous conversations and say, this is what you should be talking about, because I detected this topic about 10 times in the last week, so you really got to do something about that. This is a suggested task.
And this is directed at me, not at you two. And have you remembered to do those things you promised to do last time on that, which is one of my favorite things about Viva Insights and the elements there now. So I think, again, we're talking about a product. It will just be somewhere that it appears on there. I agree.
So you think we're moving more towards talking about productivity tasks rather than the product, the processes and what we need to achieve, rather than the products that we're using to achieve it with?
I think so, but also that it just happens that we are more productive naturally. We don't have to think about it. You still have to think to a certain degree about putting your things into to make your notes, and that it's almost like you actively have to do that. I think with the AI power, the new Clippy, you'll be kind of nudged into doing that. so it won't be so active. You'll be nudged towards it on there. So similar to what you're saying there, but I think it's not that you'll have to think about that process or think about the tool. It will just happen.
So Viva's going to be the driver for nudging us to put our tasks into our task list in to do. To do is going to have that automatically populated loop component in it with our detailed breakdown, and it's going to surface it to us everywhere else we work.
Yeah.
Sound good?
You got it. I think, you know, put a bow on it and sell it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But I often talk about Viva, that Viva is a brand. It's not necessarily, you know, if we look at Viva Connections, and there was a lot said about this when it came out. Hang on, it's just SharePoint, and there's a certain element of truth about that. But by putting that brand around it and putting that employee-centric view, it focuses on the importance of the personalization, of bringing those tools in front of people and bringing news relevant to different people, rather than it's just SharePoint. And I think, so I don't think Viva's going to go away. I think it would just become more natural. And I loved what Microsoft did. I think they heard that concern that, you know, we're talking today about what tool to use when. And as more and more of those Viva services came out, it was like, yeah, I'm going to use Viva Amplify to go and ask people, no, hang on, that's something else, isn't that? That's Insights, it's Pulse. That kind of confused people a bit, and bringing that together, that slide that's got there, and as we have our rooms today, that connection, insight, growth, and purpose. It's similar to what you were saying there. It's that purposeful reasons for doing things, and here's the sort of thing you can do with that naturally flows. So I think Viva's not going to go away because it's a brand. It's a way of pulling together the different elements. Thank you. I had a feeling you might have it there, but didn't want to put you in it.
Yeah, just took a little bit of adjusting to bring it on screen.
Yeah, and the reality, I think one thing I'd probably change about this slide is you got Microsoft 365 at the bottom. I'd have Teams there because it becomes the place to go to. And, you know, we haven't really talked that much about Teams because it's now naturally, I think, certainly to the three of us and to many, many other people, it's the place to go. You go there to get towards all the different things you need, and that surfaces things there. And I know Jeff Steeper's talked about it as being the platform, almost like an operating system, which I love that phrase. And I'm sure he's kind of backed away from that slightly before people got too excited about, oh, we're going to see new laptops. No, calm down. It's that kind of thought.
Teams books.
Yeah. I think I did hear someone say that, but it's that side of things that you just go there and it becomes more and more natural about where things are, if it's been implemented well as well, and if people have thought about what people need, then it becomes very natural.
So we've seen a trend too with a number of the products in Microsoft 365 and in Viva where they're named after the action, you know, the verb, as they say. We're going to loop someone in. We're going to create a team in Teams. We need to get some insights from Insight. Is it Insight or Insights? Funny.
It's Insights, but it's Insight is the group. Yeah.
This is the new misspelling within the Microsoft. You know, we've got SharePoint with a capital P. Anyway, or Copilot with the lowercase p. Yeah, like there's so many products that are named after actions and verbs that if that just melded together, where we're not saying, hey, let's open up Loop, but we open up in a workspace. We're not saying we're adding a Loop component. We're just adding a component. We're getting an insight where let's go and figure out our purpose for this quarter. You know, like it's not now about a product, but it's about, well, actually what people recognize, right? Back to your challenge there, Kevin, when you listed off a couple of products and you go, Amplify, no, it's not that, it's this, that. Like they know what they want to do. They're just going through the Rolodex of what the heck is this thing called again? So if it's called after the action that you're going to do, then you just think of it as this one platform. But I'll say this as part of a thing that will definitely slow that vision down. When you're a product company with many, many products and you've got product loyalties and product focuses, everyone needs to represent their thing and licenses to sell. and that's where the loyalties lie, and yeah, it just becomes challenging from the user perspective.
I'm going to challenge that ever so. No, I'm not going to challenge that, but add to that as well, because I think there is a certain amount of selling it to people and wanting to be there, but I think also there's getting it. The fluid framework, which is effectively what Loop is, has been around for quite a while, but people just didn't quite get it. They didn't have that vision of what it was. Like the Microsoft Graph, the majority of people didn't get it until Delve came along, until Loop came along, and was like, oh, wow, this is brilliant. This is really good. And it's like, well, it's been a year and a half, 2 years that the fluid framework and the possibility of this is, but it didn't resonate with people as well. So yes, there is absolutely that selling, allowing people to, large organization, making sure you're making a name of yourself, making sure there's something that you can promote there. But I think there is also that both for Microsoft as an organization and for companies themselves to sell internally, you need that simplification. And that's again why I've loved Viva. It's a wrapper of lots of different technical things that are there. But it just, people get it. Oh, Viva, that's that employee experience thing. Boom, there you've got that simplicity of getting people in, and then you can explain what it is with that. So, do I like that? No, I love it that we live in a world where you could just kind of explain that theory and it would just happen. But the human psychology doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Do you remember when Office 365 called Outlook calendar, email, and people? And SharePoint wasn't SharePoint, it was sites.
Yep.
And that didn't stick around for long. So it's like we've all been conditioned to kind of a consumerization of recognize the brand and the product and then think the function. And, one would hope that, as I know, productivity people and people who care about adoption and the benefits of why we've got this stuff, that it shouldn't matter about the product name, but in reality, it kind of does.
Yeah, and it's partly because that's how, from an IT perspective, they're configured. I think it depends on how you're coming at the challenge. And I think that's one of the reasons many businesses have had difficulty with Viva, because they've come at it from that IT perspective. And it's not purely an IT platform. I think this idea of products and how we come at the products and what the products are for and what does the product do is part of our challenge with looking at which tool do we use when. And if we look at it from the other angle, what are we trying to achieve and what's the right product for that? I think it makes it easier. So, for example, if I want to hang a picture on the wall and I've got a nail, I go for a hammer because a hammer hammers in a nail. But I think about what I'm trying to do. Well, I don't use
if it's handy, like a shoe, anything like that.
Well, yes, there are other ways of doing it which work. But if I use the right tool, it's easier. And I think that's where we get confused from an IT pro perspective with some of these products. We think about the product and what to do with them rather than thinking about what we're trying to do and which is the best product to do that in.
Yeah, absolutely. So how, the one, sorry, I'm going to take over the questions now, Sarah.
Go ahead.
The one thing that I think be interesting to hear what everyone thinks is how you get these out there. The what to use when. If we look at Microsoft 365 and Matt Wade's fantastic periodic table of Office 365 and help that people understand. I love this view that we're showing now for the kind of Viva elements for it. But if we look kind of in the probably not too distant past, organizations would kind of rename products and put it out. So like we hear the landing about the intranets, people rolling out a project system would call it something else. I remember one organization, it was Tracker, it wasn't Project Server. They wanted to give it a nice branded name. I kind of feel that's, for intranets is still there, but generally for other things has faded away. So how do organizations get people to better understand what to use when?
The starting point we've seen is And I think the best starting point is understanding the organization and how they work to start with. Because the next level or the next step is, what are the scenarios that people relate to? We know that, let's take Outlook, because everyone knows it. It's got, hundreds of features in there. And it is like pulling out that Swiss Army pocket knife with 400 blades and 20 screwdrivers and a corkscrew and something. I don't know what the heck this thing is, but I think I can sew a sack with it, and mine diamonds or something. But it's that one big thing that you're like, I don't know what to do. But once
I've
you
literally
once you
just had
say,
oh, that's what it's for moment.
yeah, that's right, mining diamonds. The blowtorch. It's actually a Swiss Army blowtorch. It's like, but when you flip it on the other side and say, what are the 5 things that we need to do that are core, that everyone needs to do, and it's common, and it's a common scenario that overlaps with most personas in the organization. Let's focus on that. So how do we do those things? 4 steps for this, 4 steps for that. We can relate to it. And then we build on that from there. What is the next thing and the next thing? And I think that's where people relate to it, because they can see themselves in it, which is kind of with that whole intranet or name a thing and make it our own. But it actually takes work to do that. And that's the challenge for organizations. They don't necessarily want to go to that level because it can cost money and time, but it actually helps people to relate to it better.
I would totally agree. So whenever I'm training SharePoint, I have a spiel. OneDrive is for one, Teams is for working with your team, and SharePoint is for the shared information. But it depends on how your organization wants to divide that, because there's a lot of overlap in that. So it does come back to, what are you trying to achieve, and which is the ideal tool in your toolbox to do that? Because you might not have the ideal tool in your toolbox. You might have a tool that's good enough. And that, obviously with Microsoft 365, we're talking about different licenses for different products, different features. So that's what I mean. We might not have quite the right tool available to us. But you're definitely right with that assumption, Darrell. It's starting from what you're trying to do. And businesses don't often have the luxury or the opportunity to have that thought process. And that's why I think it's really important that people like us talk about the case studies, the different places we're seeing these products used, how they're being used, how it's being used well. We perhaps should talk about how it doesn't quite work as well.
Yeah.
But everyone wants to be positive, don't they?
And I tweet that and say where it doesn't work, what scenarios it doesn't work in, on that as well. I was listening to Camp Beedham talking about rolling out Viva goals at CPS earlier. That was some of the examples. Is they found that people weren't updating the numbers enough, and that's where the kind of automation magic of there. And she was saying, "Yep, we should do a bit more with that." And I'm pretty sure they are. If not, I'll be having a word with them, because they really should have done. But it's it's really that acceleration of things. It's that moving things on, automating on there. The other thing I'd say on both of what you were saying about getting scenarios, absolutely agree with that. And my favorite one with that is Yammer / Viva Engage. It's, don't just turn it on and say, let's have some chat in there. Pick a particular scenario, whether it's I can't work out if I can talk about this song. I'm going to be vague about this very large Christian charity, international one there, and they were looking at ways to engage, and it became the prayer network place and they could also share carols around Christmas of these are kind of nice ones that go on there. It had that purpose, but then don't fixate on that. Allow it to evolve as well. That's when you kind of got a reason for it. You get the momentum. Allow that momentum. Give people that freedom. Yeah, you've got to consider governance. Don't trust me, I've been there. You get burnt if you don't consider any governance, but have that sort of flexibility at first to allow people try things out, see what lands, where it doesn't. Make sure you have that governance to tidy it back up afterwards and it doesn't become a mess, but allow it to evolve from there. So have a specific scenario. Don't just say, let's be social, let's engage, because it doesn't happen. Have that scenario and then allow it to expand and support those who are doing well. And my first experience of rolling out SharePoint, I loved it because I had no idea where some of the people were going to take it, and it exploded. So it became definitely a governance issue of looking after that. But the way some of the people did the things were fantastic. We never would have sat down and gone through that. I think if we had a full project doing it, we probably would have taken it down a certain route. The way they had it, because they lived that experience, was far better. And then we could come in and kind of go, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? One person who's still my favorite, I think we got to, I think it was 1,200 actions in a Nintex workflow. And I was like, wow, I didn't know you could automate that. And they were like, automate? No, I spent a week creating this. We were like, oh, okay. But the process that they solved with it was perfect, and that's where we could come in, rework that workflow, use sub workflows, and make it more efficient from there. And then we made that almost an internal case study as well. That's the other thing, is where you have those good scenarios, you supported people with it. Shout about it, tell everyone else, put it into that business language that's relevant to other people, not that techie language of how we can collaborate and work together. Talk about it if we worked on this project and this is where we shared the meeting notes and that kind of thing. It puts it in the language that other people understand as well.
Yeah.
You got to put something on the table, right? You got to start somewhere. And like if it was open it up and letting people to try things out and discover those scenarios, great, but make sure you put the effort in to gather the feedback. What did we learn from that? What actually resounded with people, and then tell that story. And when you're telling that story, don't get offended if people go, no, that's not how you do it. I would do this. Yeah, great, exactly. Make it your own, mate, because then we know it's succeeding and you're taking it on. It's interesting. Like, it's almost like, what do they call them? When you have a role like a business partner, internally in big organizations, they have like an HR business partner. So it's someone that their role is to go out and talk to various different business units and be that conduit through to the bigger org. It's like you need someone in that role who's happy to go around and talk to managers about their challenges and people at the front line and just gather those stories and help to collate all that in terms of what the relatable scenarios are for each of these products, for Viva, for Teams, and for Loop.
Yeah. I mean, I always start with to drive adoption, you find a problem that the product that you're trying to introduce solves, and then it can go from there. So we start with, there is one way to do it. This is the way we do things in our organization, but very quickly we evolve that and it becomes that there is more than one way. So we don't have to be dogmatic and Mandalorian with our single way forward. We can actually be much more pragmatic and move on from that dogmatic situation.
So I have permission to take my helmet off?
You do.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
And I'm putting in no spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the final episode of the final of the current series of The Mandalorian.
I can't remember what happens now, but yeah. Sorry, I can't give that away.
There we go. You can't give it away. No, but I think with
it's almost business, this is the way, and this, and this, and this.
Well, it was
this is catchy.
Way,
however,
however, yes. And that's really where we're at, isn't it? That's really what we're saying. We're saying these are the tools. This is the way you use them. However, make your own.
And I think it's guiding principles. Whatever you're going to do with these tools, make sure that you do it simply. And sometimes in being part of this ecosystem where tools and platforms are releasing features every 2 weeks. Look at this, look at this, look what we can do. Try this out. You must use this. It's amazing. Be part of my private preview. You feel kind of obliged to try it all out. But we kind of lose sight of the elegantly simple. And if it is elegantly simple, it's actually quite impressive. It means that people find it easier to pick it up and use it and engage with it. And I'm always in awe of a communicator who can take 3 sentences or a paragraph or two, distill it down to 2 sentences that an 8-year-old could understand. And it's like, whoa, how did you simplify that? I have the skills. And that's kind of what we need in our tools. Is we know that it can do so many things, but if we can at least find that elegantly simple way for people to make their start and build on that, then we've got a common language.
I don't think I can add to that.
This is the way.
That is very definitely the way.
No, I think the only thing I'd say is, as someone who's been around the Microsoft space for a while, we're making it sound simple and go for those things. It is a challenge for people to know what to use when. I don't think any of us would shy away from that and go, no, it's easy. Use this, you use that for this case. I can tell you exactly when to use Teams and when to use Yammer. Viva Engage. Damn it. I need a swear box. But it's not. It is hard, and trying to explain that to people. And I think, again, that it does go back to what is the scenario we're trying to address with things. And I think the biggest challenge, and many of you will be there and maybe debating whether you should go for licenses. We're here at Viva One. Should you invest in either some of those point licenses or the Viva Suite? What is the benefit of going for that extra Viva Insights license? Can I not just get this stuff from Graph, etc., etc.? That is why genuinely we want days like this to kind of share what is possible, to share what those things are, to get understanding and talk about some of those scenarios, so you have that kind of, oh, you could use it for this. I loved it. Going back onto Viva Insights. I was at a Viva Insights session from Microsoft, and you hear a lot about the using the leader and the manager side of things to kind of track burnout. Looking for people working after hours, looking for people too many meetings, not able to collaborate as much. But this session talks about the diversity and inclusion, and the fact that you can, and there are some pre-cam reports that you can look at to see how often is the manager and the employee going to the same meeting, because if that's the case, then there's that lack of trust. Coming back to empowerment, there's that lack of empowerment. Is there an issue here that we need to kind of let people delegate a bit more? And then taking that further, Microsoft also found, because they aggregate all this data, that women are more likely, I think it was like 5% more likely to have their manager at a meeting than the men were. And you can start to slice this down by different sort of diverse groups. And it was like, oh, I hadn't considered that sort of scenario and how it could be used there. So having these different ideas and then tying it back, and that story has resonated with so many sort of D&I, diversity inclusion officers, has been speaking today, who've kind of gone, yeah, burnout, yeah, it's really, but that fits with a big initiative we're trying to put, and it allows you to kind of see the power of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's important not to get hung up on what you're trying to achieve with the products as well. I know we've said, yes, why use which product, but exactly as you said earlier, Kevin, allowing those products to grow and allowing them to show you what's possible, especially with the Viva platform. It's there to support the employee experience. It's there to help businesses be good employers, have happy, productive, connected, empowered employees. And we all know that hits the bottom line. Yeah, I know, I miss growth. And
I was like,
I nearly got them all in. But, we don't do that by being rigid about what we expect the information to show us. We do that by taking the tool, starting using it for something, but allowing it to evolve and allowing it to show us the other products.
And I think that's the surprising part of when a product is used kind of way beyond what it was intended to be used for. Like Outlook's a great example. It's become like the backstop for every kind of messaging notification or whatever.
So very quick, I'm just going to jump over to the other room, so I'll try and come back in a sec.
Yeah, no problem. It's like being able to I know we've got to think of governance and security and definitely have some certain ring fences and guides. But I was thinking about actually again I'll just talk about Loop and that story. We're on the private preview, and of course there's lots of early things that they were developing and pulling together, and you get to talk to people about how you've been using it. And I guess we pushed the envelope. We just applied it to a scenario and a situation and started to use it and aligned it to our needs. And that got them thinking about, we didn't think of that. We didn't imagine that it might have been used that way. And we're going to find pockets of that with all of the products if we can get into those conversations and allow people to explore the possibilities.
Exactly. And I think we, as MVPs, we do get to see that, don't we? We do get to see behind the scenes a little bit as we give the feedback as users of these products as to what we're trying to do with them, and as Microsoft respond to that and develop the products. I think that's one of the most fascinating things, actually seeing how they work with that feedback and how that feedback can actually challenge the product development teams into taking the tool into a different space. Yeah. So keep using the tools the way you want to use them. Feedback to Microsoft as to what you're trying to do with it, and we'll evolve these products together.
I think what I possibly add to that is a little bit of promotion, which I was going to put in the comments. Not for me this time, but the formerly the MVPs were invited to the Viva Customer Connections program, run by the amazing Natasha Chomsky. I can never remember her full name on there. She's always known as Nacho. And that is for anyone who's using Viva. You can self-nominate, and I'll put the link in the chat that has it to that. And that has that option to engage with Microsoft, to have the product teams. They have regular, at least twice a week, I think. There's sessions that go on, and you can ask those questions. And I love those sessions because you hear that live feedback of what people are using. When Microsoft first talked about the extra services, the immediate feedback of, whoa, there's too much coming. This is almost that what to use when was fascinating there. So and Microsoft have adapted to that. They've adapted to this kind of pillar approach of kind of trying to make it clear around what the different ones have been doing. So they do listen to these. So I cannot articulate enough how worthwhile those sessions are. You can hear what's coming under NDA. You can get on early previews for things. But for me, the biggest thing is hearing that challenges that other people are having and hearing how Microsoft adapt to that as well.
So I think where we've got to is, yes, Teams is the hub for teamwork. And yes, that's where we perhaps communicate and start out our collaboration journey. Loop is that canvas where we can collect information from. And Viva does give us the ability as an organization to pull the whole experience together. But the best experience is from using the suite of tools that you have at your disposal in a flexible way that suits your organization. Is that a fair summary of our conversation today?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the way Teams has been constructed, it provides a place for conversation, a place to store files, and the framework to have various different apps that are brought into that space. And that continues to improve with Teams 2.0. I mean, where I might start a meeting with two or three people, we're trying to brainstorm something. What am I going to use for that brainstorming? Where am I going to put those ideas where we can all work on it together? I'm still using Teams for that meeting experience. I might be using Loop as the collaborative canvas to pull that stuff together and share it later on. And the files, they're still stored in Teams, or they're still ultimately stored on SharePoint. So, we're already getting that the lines blurred, and that you do need to find your way and find that rhythm that suits your organization.
Yeah. I would just add to that I'm using the Viva Insights to block out my focus time to do my prep and follow up from that meeting as well. So yeah, it really, because otherwise I'm sure everyone's the same. Your calendar just gets full of more meetings. And you never get your work actually done.
It's such a quick way of doing it as well. Yeah, we could go in and manually block that time, but it's like click, click. Okay, I can always update the name of it later to what I'm meant to be doing then, but it will stop someone else, hopefully, stealing that time.
You got to defend it, Kevin, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit like your lunch times. I had that conversation with...
what?
Defend your lunch times. Like, unless of course it's a super uber important client or person that's not as flexible, I'll move my lunchtime down a slot or two on the calendar and be a bit flexible. But yeah, like Sarah, I agree. Like the blocking time for tasks, for prep, for bringing your best self to a meeting is so important, and it gives you that headspace to do so. So, using the Viva Insights panel within wherever you're working, Outlook, Teams, and reviewing at some point, beginning of the day, what are the meetings that are coming up for me? What do I need to do? Can I book some prep time now? Are there any documents that have been suggested to me to review beforehand? All important.
I think we're almost at time, so I'm going to bring us to a close by just referring back to the room that we're in. We're in the connections room, and we're talking about everything else. And the reason we're doing this is quite simply because the power of these tools and the products that we're working with comes by connecting them together and connecting them to what your employees need to be able to do with them. So absolutely. I hope you've all found our conversation useful and enlightening, and I hope you join us after a short break for more Viva round the world. What's up next, Kevin? Do you happen to know, or am I putting you on the spot?
You're going to put my spot. So we have, talking about that overall, we've got Leslie Crook. It's 11 o'clock UK time, so about an hour and 5 minutes. It's going to be talking about her Viva origami, which is we've been talking about how to share what is what. That's a lovely visual way of doing that. At the same time, we have Stella Hansen. It's going to be talking about how he adopted no meetings Fridays with Viva Insights. So encouraging that. Ironically, he's going to be doing that by presenting in a meeting on a Friday, but we'll ignore that one. We have Al Erdley. It's going to be talking about how to start the Viva conversation. We talked earlier about how do you get that licensing, how do you get that understanding of what the problem is. I think Al will dig into that even more. And then a lovely session from Ulrika Headlands called Viva Learning Inside Out. So really diving, I know you forgot growth, Sarah, but it is an important element of Viva. So picking up that learning element of growth all at the same time. And do check out the vivaexplorers.com/Viva around the world. And we've got the full schedule up there.
Thank you.
Lovely. Fantastic. Thank you for hosting that, Sarah. And I think we can probably end the broadcast. And thank you again very much, Darrell, for all your help moderating today. Really huge. It couldn't have happened earlier without you. So
you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Great tools. More tools.
Yeah, exactly.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.